to Fox News Alert. News from the President of the United States that there has been an attack inside Iran. Just moments ago, President Donald Trump putting out on Truth Social, we have completed our very successful attack on 3 nuclear sites in Iran, including Fordo, Natanz, and Esfahan. All planes are now outside of Iran airspace. Again, this from President Donald Trump. A full payload of bombs was dropped on the primary site, Fordo. All planes are safely on their way home. Congratulations to our great American warriors. There is not another military in the world that could have done this. Now is the time for peace. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Again, that's just seconds ago from President Donald Trump on Truth Social, suggesting that those B-2 bombers that perhaps were on the way may have been behind this. We'll get more details on these 3 sites that the president said has been attacked inside Iran. This comes after days of negotiations to try to get Iran to the negotiating table. The president of the United States saying it would have to be unconditional surrender, saying enrichment would have to stop. We heard from negotiations in Europe that was not being accepted by the Iranians, that they would not stop enriching uranium. There was a thought that this could go as long as 2 weeks, as the president said he would decide within 2 weeks. However, 2 days is within 2 weeks. And now word from President Donald Trump that these attacks have happened. Again, interesting that 3 sites have been struck by U.S. bombers, and this again will get more information about the exact targets and what bombs were used. We expect that the GBU-57, the bunker buster, the massive penetrator bomb, may have been one of those used. Fordo is a nuclear facility inside Iran that is roughly a half-mile deep underneath a rock mountain-like facility that has been said to be the site of a lot of the enrichment capability. Esfahan, believed to be a storage facility for enriched uranium, and Natanz, another part of the nuclear facilities. They have several throughout Iran. It has been long described as a very difficult and tedious effort to go after these nuclear sites, but the U.S. for the first time launching an attack inside Iran. Again, the President of the United States saying all of the planes are out of Iranian airspace. The bombings do continue by the Israelis inside Iran as this back and forth volley between Israel and Iran has continued for some 2 weeks. We expect to hear more about this operation, not only from the Pentagon, but perhaps from the White House, although the White House this evening has called a lid, as far as meaning no one will talk after that. That may be changing now. Obviously, we have this Truth Social post from President Donald.
All right, shalom, shalom. Breaking news, breaking news, breaking news. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, glory to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rachak, Wadash. Double honors to the elder apostles, the elder bishops, the great millstone, who rule very well, very beautifully. Double salutations to the Akim and her pushing his gospel and truth and sincerity to the best of their ability, given to them by Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai. Peace, blessings, and salutations be unto the elect scattered abroad. May the election of Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Lord will, and fall upon their houses, Lord will. This is edifying, Lord will. It is straight to the point. Again, breaking news, breaking news. America, has ultimately struck Iran, right, which it's been, threatened, right, for a long period of time now, right, that, America, and Iran would ultimately, fire missiles on each other. And now it happened, right? America ultimately struck, right? Originally, again, it was between Israel and Iran, right? America was backing Israel, right, with this whole fight against, Iran. But now America is directly in it, right? So now it's America and Israel against Iran, right? And this is heavy news. This is very important news, man. Again, beautiful news. Call all Yahweh Shemel Shah, man, because this right here, right, very well could escalate very quickly, which, let me put this out there, man. We understand first and foremost that Jacob's trouble, right, the mandatory implementation right, of the RFID Micro C HIP has to take place, right, before World War III can ultimately hit its peak, which is what? The use of intercontinental ballistic missiles, or intercontinental nuclear ballistic missiles, right? ICBMs, right? So we understand that there's an order, right? But nonetheless, this is still very great news, man, right? With America finally getting in openly, right, and directly getting into it with Iran. Hey, this is huge, man, right? And as you see, this is ultimately what the reporter was reading on, right? This is Donald Trump's tweet, right? And we're gonna read this because the latter part of this tweet is heavy, right? It says, "We have completed our very successful attack on the 3 nuclear sites in Iran, including Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. All planes are now outside of Iran airspace. A full payload of bombs was dropped on the primary site, Fordow. All planes are safely on their way home. Congratulations to our great American warriors. There is not another military in the world that can have done this. Now is the time for peace." Right? Thank you for your attention to this matter, right? So he's saying, hey, now is the time for peace, right? We're good, right? Because he dropped bombs on Iran, right? Which, Israel thought they were all big and bad against Iran, right? And then Iran fucking sat there and just dropped a shit ton of fucking missiles on Israel, right? Whooping their ass, man, and America, right? Trump and these damn Edomites, man, they believe that they good, man, but that's not the case, man. Let's go ahead and grab this right here, man. And what is that? 1 Thessalonians 5 and verse 3, it says, "For when they shall say peace and safety," and he just said this, right? Now is the time for peace, right? It says, "Then sudden destruction cometh upon them as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape." Right? America, you're not going to be able to escape, right? You're not going to be able to just drop a few bombs on Iran, which they ultimately came out and said that they emptied out Fordow a long time ago, man. It's been empty for months, So really, that's a slap in the face, right, to Trump and his administration, right? That's a slap in the face, man. You thought you just, you went ham. Maybe now, Natanz and Isfahan, right? If I'm saying that right, maybe they had something in it. Maybe they did do a little damage, man. But the main one that they were attacking was Fordow, and they came out and said, hey, that was already empty, man. Y'all look foolish, But that's not the point, right? The point is America attacked Iran, right? And then turn around and says, hey, we good now, right? Peace. But that's not the case, right? Prophecy, right? Has it that there's going to be a lot more nations than just Iran that are going to get into the mix, man. More importantly, who? Russia, man. Russia. Right? As we get in Ezekiel, the 38th chapter, we'll start at verse 4. Point is in verse 7, right? It says, "And I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth and all thine army, horses and horsemen." So the Lord Yahweh Shem El Shah, really, we've been seeing it the last few years. The Lord has ultimately turned back that, that Soviet Union, USSR, mindset within Russia, brought that all back. That tension between America, them hovering their hand over the button, right, if you will. Like, that tension has been here for years, And really, Russia's been waiting, right? They got the world's, I think the world's strongest nuclear missile, the Sarumat 2 missile, which can ultimately reach from Russia to America, right? Central America, right? Well, not Central America, but, the United States, right? The middle of the United States, within 15 minutes. Halfway across the globe, it can get here within 15 minutes. That's how fucking fast it is. And just one nuclear warhead, right? That one Sarumat missile holds multiple nuclear warheads, but one nuclear warhead, right, can literally leave a crater, right, 75 miles in diameter, as far as the initial blast. Right now, the residue, like the spread out, we're talking about over 100 miles plus, just off of one nuclear warhead. So they're waiting to use that. They're looking for that opportunity, man. And this right here, this situation very well could, if they're thinking about it, right, this very well could be, or if they're trying to avoid it, and now they're really thinking about it, Now, if they were looking at the button, now they got their hand over it, if that makes sense, right? It says, and all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them, all of them with shield and helmet. And to see this Persia, right? When you go into it in the Google, right? You can look up Persia is modern day Iran, right? The modern day Iranians are the Persians, right? Which is an ally to Russia, right? It says Gomer and all his bands, the house of Togarmah of the north quarters and all his bands, and many people with thee, right? Going into Turkey, right? Eastern Turkey, or east of Turkey, right? Like Armenia, that area, so on and so forth, right? It says, be thou prepared and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled with unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them, right? So you got Israel and America ganging up on Iran, right? Israel was again shooting missiles, attacking Iran. Iran said, you know what? Nah, we ain't having that. They fired back, and then America jumped in and said, hey, hell no, right? That was an even fight. You know what I mean? I mean, if you can call it even, right? Israel started it. Iran said don't do it. Israel fired missiles anyways, so Iran fired back. Israel started this shit, right? So Iran was justified, right, by firing back. But here comes America, right, backing these criminals, man. Right? The small hats, man, backing Israel, firing on Iran. And again, right, they did damage, but they didn't do a shit ton of damage, man. And if they did touch any kind of nuclear, arsenal, Russia just sat there and, was saying that they were going to build nuclear facilities within Iran. And then right after, you had an Israel attack, and then now you have America attacking nuclear facilities, man. So really, you're attacking a Russian asset, man. Iran. What do you think Russia's going to do, man? Russia for sure is going to get into it. We're reading it. That's according to prophecy, man. These are the times that we're in, right? A lot of people, for so long, we're talking about, no, World War III isn't coming. World War III isn't going to happen, so on and so forth. But now what's going to happen? And it's going, and this which it is happening. World War III has already started, right? But the peak of World War III, right, isn't going to happen again, first and foremost, until Jacob's trouble, right? The hour of temptation, which is the mandatory implementation of the RFID micro CHIP, right? It's not going to happen till then. But when it does happen, right, that's going to be, it's going to lead to war on American soil. There's already scares of it, right? There's already scares that Iran might be, awakening their sleeper cell, which I have that pulled up right here. As you see, it says, Raws alert, right? It says, breaking, the United States military is now briefing troops that the strike on Iran is expected to trigger counterattacks on American bases and facilities across the Middle East, and could also activate Iran-backed and other foreign terrorist organizations or organization cells abroad, including within the U.S. to target Americans. So we could very well see, these suicide bombers pop up, here in America, man, destroying certain facilities. Or either bomb. It might start with bomb threats. They might be able to get to them, right? They might, have a few of them pop off here and there, But ultimately, destruction is going to be coming to America, man. Yeah, this very well could happen, right? We don't necessarily know, right? We hope and we pray it does, but nonetheless, we understand what prophecy says, right? We understand that prophecy is that war is coming to America, man. Destruction is coming to America, right? The American soil, right? Scriptures call America the virgin daughter of Babylon, right? America about to get, for lack of better terminology, America about to get her cherry popped, man, right? When it comes to war, this is very beautiful and very heavy news, man. Let's go ahead and go to Revelations, the 18th chapter. We'll start at verse 4, because again, this is going into what's going to happen to, America, right? Again, this situation could, throw a whole bundle of wood on the fire, man, right? Which will ultimately make that shit get 100 times hotter, This is gonna make the World War III a hell of a lot worse, man. Call law Yahweh Bashim Al Shah. But this is Revelations 18:4. It says, "I heard another voice from heaven saying, 'Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, that ye receive not of her sins.'" And this is going into when Yahweh Shai comes. This is what Yahweh Shai is going to be saying in the Hebrew to the elect, right? Delivering them, right? Enter into thy chambers, It says, "For her sins have reached unto heaven, and the Most High hath remembered her iniquities." Right? It says, "Reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her double according to her works, and the cup which she hath filled to her double." It says, how much hath she glorified herself and lived deliciously?" And America has been this, place of America, the streets of gold, and the land of the free, so on and so forth. But in reality, America is just a fucking goddamn cesspool, man. It says, "So much torment and sorrow give her, for she have said in her heart, I sit a queen and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow." Right? So you got Trump sitting there saying, hey, there's going to be peace. Right? There's going to be peace. Right now is the time for peace, but that's not the case. Right? All this did was put all the rest of the world on notice that America, right, is now openly, right? So, before they were just financially, right, backing Ukraine, backing Israel, right, sending military arsenal, weapons and whatnot. But see, now America is directly involved, right, which is going to open up talks or opportunity, right, to attack America, and American troops, right? Again, America is still that number one powerhouse, right? But hey, when these nations get band together, America's power gets smaller and smaller compared to the masses, right? It says, "For sins have reached unto heaven, and the Most High remembered her iniquity." Verse 7. "How much she hath glorified herself and lived deliciously, so much torment and sorrow give her. For she saith in her heart, I sit a queen and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow." They truly believe they ain't nothing gonna happen, But again, that's not the case, right? Verse 8. "Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, right? Death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire. For strong is the Lord power, Yahweh Bashim Al Shah, who judgeth her." And this is what's going to happen to America, man. America is going to be completely and utterly destroyed, man. Right? And those plagues going into those ICBM nuclear missiles, man. Right? This is heavy news, man. Beautiful news, man. Very beautiful news. Call Lord Yahweh Bashim Al Shah, man. Lord will continues to, escalate, man. But this was a quick little update, man. World War III update, issue between America and Iran update, man. But with that, Lord will is that a final, Lord will straight to the point. All praise Yahweh Shem El Shah, Shem Karkadash Barakatah, Shalom.